Welcome to Deep Thought. Mr. Nancy is no longer on American Gods. Now check it out. Because a couple people I've seen some news about it, and a couple people even sent me a link about it. Orlando Jones, who plays Mr. Nancy on the Starz TV show American Gods, has been fired for season 3. And Orlando Jones, man, he said, he went off about it, and he said he blamed the showrunner, and he just said it had to do with Mr. Nancy's character, who, if for people, just real quick, American Gods represents, this is more like a fantasy series. And the whole premise of it is a situation of the old deities led by Odin, the Norse deity Odin, who, in a war with the new deities of the New World, Mr. Technology, Mr. World, the media, and that was the whole thing. And then the main character is a man named Shadow Moon, who has actually turned out to be the son of Odin. Now, one of the main characters was Mr. Nancy. Now, Nancy was the old god from West Africa, Anansi. I always get that. I'm never sure how to pronounce that right. But that's a trickster god. So, and in the series, like Mr. Nancy, he had 2 interesting speeches. And his general character was very pro-black, but not like more like a militant black, not peaceful. Like, oh, let's love everybody. Nah, this dude was about war. Like his first introduction, when he was actually on a slave ship in a modern day uniform, man. He actually inspired them to burn the ship down. He inspired them to burn the ship down, and then there was a very powerful speech he did when he met with a couple other African gods in the series, and that was powerful. And his general character was very his language was very racially militant. Very mean. He wasn't peaceful at all. He called people out on this stuff, everything. And as a result, though, it's a very popular character. Like, a lot of people on social media would share his speeches. And that's cool. That was cool. I liked the character. I actually liked the character. One, because he was so militant, outspoken. And one of the things is that was the nature of the deity, because you still have in the New World people who worship Nancy. They still worship that deity, and the deity played a role in many slave rebellions in the Caribbean. So it was significant, and it was actually accurate, but accordingly, they didn't want that character on there anymore. And I just thought about it. I was like, man. And, whatever the reason, that sound like the reason, but, with everything, there's always more. And that's really what I wanted to get into more in this podcast. Because remember the thing about these shows. They're inspirational. It's a key way which people are programmed. I'm going to talk about that later this week. But it's a key way. When you put images up, you can actually, what it does, what the media does, it actually programs the people who see those images. For example, back in the late 80s and early 90s, when the Cosby Show was on, that turned out to be very powerful because it changed the image and the thoughts of a lot of people, particularly black people. It changed a lot. They started behaving differently. And then if you remember the the spinoff from that show, A Different World, which it was set on a fictional black college campus, right? Historically black college campus. They actually there was actually a very significant increase in black college enrollments based on that show. So understand something, when you see these shows, when you see stuff and certain characters present a certain thing, it's more than just entertainment. It's a programming in a way. Because understand something, when your subconscious see those images, it don't make a distinction for 99% of people. Most people don't make a distinction or tell themselves or critical to say, oh, this isn't real. Or at least to send that down with a thought. Like, yeah, consciously, this is just a fantasy, but subconscious don't know the difference. Subconscious don't know the difference between reality and whatever. Like, your subconscious could view, like, say, a mass shooting. It could see the film from it. Your subconscious could view like a war scene in another country, a terrorist destruction. It could view like a protest march. It could view people, doing some good things. Feeding some children, helping to build a home, putting out a fire. Okay, those are all real images. But the way the subconscious is, it doesn't make a distinction between fiction and reality when they seeing the same thing. It's like seeing a person fly. Now, consciously, these movies, yeah, you see the person fly. Consciously, of course, ain't nobody fly, but your subconscious don't know. Your subconscious is like, oh, that person flies. Okay, that's possible. So a lot of times when you see stuff or there's changes on shows or they don't show something, it's deeper than people realize. Because when you have these shows, when writers understand something as a writer, that you're affecting their subconscious. A writer is powerful. I'm a writer. That's actually my main thing. A lot of people don't realize it. They think my main thing is podcasting and doing videos, but I'm a writer. So the books I've written, like I have 3 works of fiction. These are stories, but the way I wrote them was to actually tell a story because I knew somebody would read it and they would take it seriously. They would take it seriously. I learned that like for one of the first novels that I wrote back in the mid-90s. I had women calling me trying to resolve the story. I had a cliffhanger in the story that was actually part of the story, and I didn't think anything of it. But they were taking it seriously, and they were actually giving me scenarios how to resolve the story because it was real to them. And I had like one of the first short stories that I wrote. Women especially were taking that seriously. They said, "Rom, you made us think about some things," So that's when I really paid attention to the power of any stories or anything. And if in fact, when you think about stories in general, remember the mythologies around the world are stories. And that's how in many cultures, that's how they will teach. That's how they raise. They tell them stories. They don't tell them something in a left brain like, ABC or 1 + 1 = 2 type of thing. They'll say, oh yeah, the wolf went over there and did this or everything. In fact, some of the very profound stories that helped shape my character, I learned when I was young, and they were like actual mythological type of stories. So it's like, oh, okay. Even in different religious texts. Remember, for those who follow Christianity, the Master Jesus, he spoke in parables. Those were stories. He was telling stories. So bringing that around to this situation, the exclusion of Mr. Nancy, according to what Orlando was saying, it was because of his influence, how people were responding to him, and how it could affect the people who see it. So it's a powerful thing. Now, there might be some other stuff, but it's an important thing when you pay attention to any show, any show. Like I said, I'm gonna talk about that more this week, but it's something to think about. I really was thinking about it. So anyway, that's all I have for now. As always, just think on this. Peace and blessings.